It's 2025, a new year and the best time to turn your great idea into a business. Shopify is how you're going to make it happen. Let me tell you how. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. All you need to do is drag and drop. Their powerful social media tools let you connect all your channels and create shoppable posts. Established in 2025. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo. All lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/promo.
This episode of The Price of Football is supported by International Sports Convention 2025, which is taking place on March the 19th and 20th at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. More than 1,000 delegates and 100 speakers will be attending the event, and they will be covering a huge range of topics, from sponsorship and fan engagement to governance and integrity. Founded in 2009, International Sports Convention is the meeting place for the business of sport and has been for the last 16 years.
And there's a special treat for those lucky enough to attend the 2025 edition. The two of us will also be appearing. We'll be having a chat about football finance and governance in front of a live audience. You can book your place now at a special early offer price by going to internationalsportsconvention.com. But don't delay, that special early offer price is only available until the 20th of February.
Book your place now for International Sports Convention 2025 at Spurs Stadium on the 19th and 20th of March by going to internationalsportsconvention.com, and hopefully we'll see you there.
Yeah, sure thing.
Hey, you sold that car yet?
Yeah, sold it to Carvana.
Oh, I thought you were selling to that guy.
The guy who wanted to pay me in foreign currency, no interest, over 36 months? Yeah, no. Carvana gave me an offer in minutes, picked it up, and paid me on the spot. It was so convenient.
Just like that.
Yeah.
No hassle.
None.
That is super convenient.
Sell your car to Carvana and swap hassle for convenience. Pickup fees may apply.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. How are you, Kieran? A big question. I forgot to ask you this on Questions Day. How did your 6-hour amortisation session go at St George's Park last week?
It went very well. Troy Deeney, he was one of the people in my class. What a great bloke he is. Fantastic company, fascinating guy to have a chat to. And yeah, there was some league managers. So yeah, they're all trying to get a broader understanding of how the system works and how it affects their position, because they've all got to operate within the system. So yeah, it's good to see that people within the game are taking interest to enhance their knowledge and to make them better decision makers, and that's ultimately what we're all there for.
As a matter of interest, Kieran, was there anybody from Manchester City there at your amortisation sesshion?
Funnily enough, no, there wasn't.
So
I was going to say there was 115 there actually, but no.
Oh wow, okay, that's because clearly it's Newsday, Kieran, and the big news is that someone's put the idea into Man City's head, Kieran, that they can sign Erling Haaland on a 10-year contract.
Yes, this is a fantastic deal for Manchester City.
It's not a bad one for Erling Haaland.
And this is also a fantastic deal for Erling Haaland. It's a classic example of a win-win situation, assuming that he stays fit, assuming that he doesn't suffer a catastrophic loss of form, because Manchester City are on the hook for the next 9.5 years. 30th of June 2034, Kevin. Can you imagine what number show we'll be on? We'll still be moaning, won't we? We'll still be grumbling away. But the 30th of June 2034 is the contract that Erling Haaland has signed up to. So it's a significant extension. The club, I think, was starting to get a little bit twitchy because he had signed a 5-year contract when he joined Manchester City. He's been spectacularly successful in terms of scoring goals, but he's now down to 2.5 years remaining of his original contract. And Manchester City will have seen what has happened at Liverpool with Salah, Van Dijk and Alexander-Arnold, all now in the last 5 or 6 months of the contract, all whom could potentially walk away in June, the end of June. They've seen what's happened at Paris Saint-Germain, where Kylian Mbappe, who is still only 23, 24, effectively the same age as Erling Haaland, he walked away for nothing and got a 150 million euro signing on fee rather than the club getting anything. So from Manchester City's point of view, it locks Erling Haaland into the club and therefore preserves his market value. That's good. From the player's point of view, he's on a supposed £500,000 a week plus bonuses. So that's going to generate for him £250 million over the remaining life of the contract. But if Manchester City were to replace him, how much would it cost? If he leaves, then they're going to have to go and spend a huge sum of money recruiting strikers. Manchester City, over the course of the last 2 seasons, have actually generated £250 million from player sales. So they've got the money. Their PSR position is incredibly strong. They're in an excellent position there. And I think the other thing that they've managed to do, and I think this has probably gone under the radar, it's a similar scenario to what we saw with Liverpool and Luis Suarez in December 2013. So all of the talk has been that Erling Haaland can now potentially completely smash Alan Shearer's goal-scoring record because he's going to stay until the 30th of June 2034. But I give you Luis Suarez, who in December 2013 signed a big contract extension at Liverpool and meant that his wages went up from £80,000 a week to £200,000 a week. In 2013, that was when 200 grand a week was a lot of money. But what Liverpool did at the same time was that they removed the clause in his contract which allowed him to talk to other clubs who bid at least 40 million. And I think Arsenal famously bid 40 million and £1.
Yeah.
So from what we understand, Haaland had a clause in his contract which allowed him to leave for an agreed fee, and that clause has been removed. So if Real Madrid decide to come in for him in 2 years' time, and he'll certainly, but he'll be 25, 26 at that point in time, then they're going to have to pay full market value. They're going to have to pay 150 to 200 million pounds to secure his services. So that's what City have done. They've enhanced the potential sale price if he goes, and they've locked him in on a long-term contract. So the prospect of a Bosman is therefore highly unlikely until June 2034, and we can all reflect then on whether it was a good deal or not.
I thought it was quite funny that basically the BBC's only take on it from people like Mika Richards and Danny Murphy, who, not the best players ever in the world, but their take was just poking Alan Shearer in the face, going, he's going to beat your record.
Yes.
Come on. 500k a week, Kieran. It's almost beggars belief, but in 10 years' time, 500k a week, maybe nothing. So I presume there's an annual year-on-year increase in his weekly wage, is there?
I'd expect there to be an accelerator, yes. Most contracts, but certainly when we've spoken to some of our secret agents, when their clients have signed a long-term contract, and I'd say long-term contract is 3 years or more, there is normally an enhancement on a season-by-season basis. The ones that I've seen might be £100 or £200 increase. I suspect Erling Haaland's might be a wee bit more.
Do you think this is the start of a trend, Kieran, or are there too few players of Haaland's quality for this to be anything other than a one-off.
I think you've answered your own question there. He is an elite player. If you take a look at his goal-scoring record, remember we've also seen Cole Palmer, who initially signed a 7-year deal at Chelsea. Well, after 1 year, he then signed a 2-year extension, and now he got a substantial pay rise on the back of that as well. So I think it will be relatively infrequent, because how many players are generational in talent, such as Haaland, or potentially Cole Palmer, players who could get into, I think if you've got a player who can get into every single Premier League team, could get into Real Madrid or Barcelona's team, then it is worth doing. If you've got a really good squad player, then I think we'll be looking at 5 to 6 years max.
In the meantime, Kieran, Man City have concluded another deal this week, but it's one that's been under the radar.
Yes. If people have seen Manchester City's training gear, it is sponsored by Asahi Super Dry. I think it's a beer. I think it's a Japanese beer. My knowledge of these things, as you know, is fairly sketchy.
I can confirm, Kieran, it is a beer.
It is a beer.
Yes, indeed.
I thought as much. And
it's not a moisturiser, Kieran. It's a beer. It's not the sort of thing you might need after riding your new bike for 2 hours a day when you're not ready for it.
Getting chafing from the wind.
From the wind. Well, take something for the wind, Kieran. This would be the traditional reply, wouldn't it?
But there is a clothing brand called Superdry.
Yeah,
and they say there is something in the world of intellectual property protection called passing off, i.e., you're trying to be a bit like somebody else. You're mimicking. And intriguingly, 2 people have got in contact with me over the course of the last few days to say that there is a new football finance podcast which has come out, which has got a logo which is quite similar to that of the Price of Football. So, and they said, do you think they're trying to pass off? I go, well, no, because, Kevin and I, we are the Price of Football, and if you've listened to it once, and I say good luck to these people. I'm all in favour of increasing the amount of content out there. But what Superdry, the clothing manufacturer, was saying was that the Japanese beer was, because it was effectively second to the UK market, was trying to pass itself off and was potentially damaging the brand of Superdry, and could it be taking sales away from Superdry? Manchester City's response, which I think has a fair amount of common sense to it, is that I think most people can tell the difference between a bottle of beer and a cagoule. So it looks as if there's been an out-of-court settlement. You're never going to be sure how these things have gone. I've been involved in a legal case recently where it's now been settled out of court, and even I don't know what the outcome is, and I was just a witness in the particular case. So you're never too sure as to how these things, but from what I understand, if Manchester City have paid a bit of money across, it will be a nominal sum, not significant, because I think a judge will take the view of the person on the Clapham omnibus and say, I think most people can tell these apart.
Yeah. See, it shows how much more of a generous person you are than I am, Kieran, because you say, good luck to these people with their new financial podcast. I say, let's set Nick DeMarco onto them and make sure they never broadcast again and never mention the words price or football, is what I say. The passing off thing, Kieran, is going to get, just apropos, in my industry, AI, there's nothing to stop. Trademarks don't count when it comes to AI. The Labour government, it seems, are kowtowing to huge tech companies in this and failing to protect copyright. So, for example, Stephen Fry made a very passionate speech last week because there was an audio book done by an AI voice which copied Stephen Fry. To all intents and purposes, it is Stephen Fry. But it wasn't Stephen Fry that did it. So it's a huge deal in commercials as well, TV commercials, because not a lot of advertisers can afford Stephen Fry, so they'll just get an AI to do his voice because you can't trademark your own voice. So I'm sure this is an issue that will come up again and again in football as we go on. Now, Kieran, you sent a tweet this week about Brighton increasing ticket prices next season. It's happening at most clubs, certainly in the Premier League, and Liverpool fans in particular are very upset about it and have used some quite emotive language.
Yes. Liverpool fans are very proud. I've done some work with Spirit of Shankly. They kindly asked me to give an address at their AGM. And I'll be honest, I was very honoured. And Peter Hooton of The Farm, he's involved with them. So I'm a big fan of his music as well. So that was made up. Liverpool fans are rightly saying, in my view, that the Kop, to a large extent, is Liverpool, in the sense that you and I are old enough to remember watching the footage in the 60s and the 70s, and the sight of the Kop, the noise of the Kop, the anthemic approach that the fan base took was a contributory factor to the success of the club, first of all under Bill Shankly, then Paisley and Fagan and so on, and Kenny. And that needs preserving. I think the fan groups have taken the view, and they've effectively said to the club, we know that you can sell out every ticket to tourists. But if you do that, you risk destroying part of the magic of the Kop itself. If you put prices up, then you are going to slowly, and it is sort of a drip. You're going to make it more difficult for people in the Anfield area. And I work in the city of Liverpool. It's not a wealthy part of the city, but it is a passionate part of the city. And part of the reason why I genuinely love Liverpool is that the people they're funny, they're friendly, they'll give you stick, but they'll be fair with you as well. So I've always enjoyed my time at places like that. FSG, they're there to maximise their return on investment. Let's be honest. How many times has John Henry attended Liverpool matches since FSG acquired the club? Approximately the same number of times as the Glazers have attended Manchester United matches, which is diddly squat, although it is more times than Stan Kroenke's attended Arsenal matches. So we've got absentee landlords who don't understand the culture and the history. Why are so many fans from Scandinavia, from Ireland, from Indonesia, and so why all these fans decided to support Liverpool? It's because they've seen the Kop. And if you replace those people who have contributed so much towards the success of Liverpool as a football club, and I know it's horrible, and as Liverpool as a brand, and we've got to be callous and say the football club is part of the brand of the city, and it's a brand in their own right, and Liverpool FC leverage off the back of that. Then, in due course, you run the risk of taking away some of the magic. So the fans have said, if you are going to put up prices, be careful. If you alienate Liverpudlians from the Kop, and Liverpool already has one of the lowest percentages of season tickets to overall capacity, it's less than 50%. Then you do so at your own peril and chasing short-term financial gain by selling out tickets to other fans. And if I was a Liverpool fan from Indonesia or Cork or the Scandi or wherever, I understand their passion and I understand them wanting to come to the city of Liverpool. And when Liverpool at home, you can't get a hotel room that weekend. So that's part of the reason why I've moved into an apartment. I can't afford to stay in hotels in the city in which I work because of that. And there's no grumbles from me because it's good news for the city overall. But there is a concern because the general direction of costs is going up. You mentioned Brighton to put up their prices by 5%. I still think I'm getting good value for my ticket, but I'm in a privileged position that I earn a decent amount of money, and I could afford 5% quite easily. And I'm in the cheapest seats anyway. 5% for other people when inflation's running at 2%. If everybody's getting pay rises of 5%, that's fine. I don't know many people, with the exception of Erling Haaland, who are getting pay rises of for more than 5%. So it is increasing the expectations on fans. So Liverpool fans, I think they've got a number of very organised fan groups, and they are coming together, and they're also coming together with fans of other clubs as well. The success of the Premier League is built partially on the vibrant atmospheres that we've seen ourselves. And Palace, whilst as an opposing fan of Crystal Palace, I'll make snarky comments about the Black Hoodie Brigade. They do make a lot of noise, and it does look good on television. And as part of the product of the Premier League, it's a contributor to the success of the league.
We're so done with New Year, New You. This year, it's more you on Bumble. More of you shamelessly sending playlists, especially that one filled with show tunes. More of you finding Geminis because you know you always like them. More of you dating with intention because you know what you want. And you know what? We love that for you. Someone else will too. Be more you this year and find them on Bumble.
I don't think any of us, despite what some people have accused us of saying, Kieran, neither of us have ever said that Liverpool fans from London or from Dublin or from Singapore or from Berlin or Copenhagen shouldn't be allowed to go to Liverpool games. No. Of course they should. But the emotive language that Liverpool fans are using is killing the cop. The reason those people want to go there in the first place is because they've grown up seeing it. My generation, I think 76 or 77, we'd only just got a colour TV and watching them play St Etienne at Liverpool the first time you'd see it. Just incredible. And that's why these people want to come. They can't come at the expense of people who live 10 miles from it. It's as simple as that. Your tweet about Brighton kicked off a really unpleasant argument on some Palace WhatsApp groups today when a couple of the more middle-class Palace fans, shall I say, indicated that they didn't think that elderly fans should get a discount on season tickets because they're all part of the baby boomer generation who've grown up and they all own their own houses. So one or two of us had to point out that wasn't quite the case. That 65, 66, 67-year-old Palace fans and Brighton fans are not all don't all own their houses outright. And then I'm not so sure about Brighton. I don't want to make the usual jokes about Keenwhite, but Selhurst Park is in a very deprived area. One even suggested that elderly fans should be means tested if they wanted a pension. So, which I got very angry. I still regret it, Kieran. A long time ago in Edinburgh, I love Edinburgh, as you know, and I will take leaflets off all the students. I've got no beef against young people. I love young people. I love young performers. I love people who get into the energy of Edinburgh. I love going down the Royal Mile when everyone's giving out their leaflets and doing excerpts from the shows. But a while back, a young lad from Durham University thrust a leaflet into my hand and said, "Come and see our show. It's about the general strike when people didn't want to work." I said, "I'm sorry, young man. I beg your pardon. Could we just wind that back a little bit?"
Yes.
So I gave him a précis of what happened with the general strike. He got quite. I paid for him to have his face painted in the end because he was quite upset. I didn't go and see the show because it probably would have kicked off. On the other side of Stanley Park, Kieran, although not for long, obviously, only for the rest of this season, as we mentioned in our last pod, the questions pod, it seems like Everton now have a completely clear slate financially, not debt-wise, but certainly when it comes to the Premier League.
Yes, Everton were subject to points deductions on 2 occasions in season 23-24. And when the Second Commission published their report, they said there's an outstanding issue. And that outstanding issue was relating to the borrowings of the club from owner Farhad Moshiri and some other places. Now, under accounting rules, if you borrow money to create a piece of real estate, a hospital, a football stadium, a theatre, whatever it is, what you're able to do is that the interest on those loans can be added to the cost of the piece of real estate. So rather than showing it as an expense, and the reason why this is important from Everton's point of view is that Everton have been building Bramley-Moore Dock. They have borrowed large sums of money. What they didn't do very well, and this sort of broadly goes back to my central concern about competence levels and professionalism at the club, was that the paperwork didn't make it clear what the borrowings were for. So the Premier League says, well, the money you borrowed, that could have gone into the transfer budget. Everton was saying, well, this is how much the stadiums cost. So the Commission said, this is such a technical issue that we don't feel that we can make a judgment before the end of season 23-24. So they effectively kicked it into the long grass. And we're now in January 2025. So that's a very long piece of long grass. My view has been unequivocal. I can understand how football clubs gain a benefit from being able to pay higher wages and sign players on higher transfer fees. And as a result of that, they breach PSR. So they are clearly gaining a competitive advantage over those clubs that have complied with the rules. In the case of Everton, my view is that Everton borrowed the money to build the stadium. They're getting no advantage on the pitch as a result of that, because the stadium doesn't come into being until 25-26, as we know. Do I think that they really ought to look at contracts a lot closer? Absolutely. And I think this is further evidence that the Farhad Moshiri regime was unprofessional in patches. And as a result, it's landed the club with this. So the Premier League and Everton have come to an agreement that the charges are going to be quietly dropped, but there's still uncertainty involved as to what were the legal costs for Everton. Are those going to be borne by the Premier League? Are they going to be borne by Everton? Does Everton have to go and bear the Premier League's? What is the nature of the overall settlement? Because, as we've established, legal costs in relation to footballing disputes are considerable, and we will be talking, in all probability, a 7-figure sum, which could probably have been spent on other things.
As a matter of interest, Kieran, where do those legal costs lay when it comes to profit and sustainability?
They count. So unless you can prove it's exceptional. So I think this is an intriguing issue when we're looking at Manchester City, because I think both Manchester City and the Premier League are likely to have an overall legal bill in excess of £50 million per party, given that it's taken 18 months to put the cases together, given that the hearing itself took 10 or 11 weeks. If you've got people such as Lord Panic on £10,000 an hour, and admittedly, he won't have been there for all of the 10 weeks, you've only got to do the sums sort of very, very quickly. That meter is running around extremely rapidly. So from what I can make out, there's no reason why you're allowed to avoid the legal cost being part of your overall running costs of a business, because you might have other legal disputes, not with the Premier League, but as we've seen with Manchester City and Superdry. So that there's nothing in the rules which indicates that they can be exempt.
And as you say, that 50 million, that's 3 decent players for a club like Everton as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everton's new stadium does look fantastic. I can't wait to go next season because it does look like they will stay up. But not far down the road, Sir Jim Ratcliffe seems to be a touch optimistic, Kieran, about the timescale of Man United's new stadium.
Well, he's hoping that a final decision whether or not Old Trafford in its present guise is going to be extended to a capacity of 87,000, or B, there's going to be a complete new build. And I think they have identified a site not too far away, and it looks as if, I think it's one of the freight companies which is based there, which owns some land. I think they potentially might be moving to, they could move to St Helens or somewhere similar in the northwest. And if that is the case, then there should be sufficient room to build a 100,000 capacity stadium. But it's going to take, if that is the case, it's going to take an estimated 7 years. So we're talking 2032, 2033. Erling Haaland will still be across the road. So yeah. I'm sure that Manchester United fans will be delighted to see him rock up. If that is the case, I would imagine that Manchester United will be able to double their current, or close to double their current matchday revenues, which are £130 million a year. There's no reason why they couldn't be looking at £250 million a year, because the direction of travel in terms of ticket prices, we've just seen today, we've been talking about ticket prices, the ticket prices that Manchester United are going to charge Leicester City for a 4th round FA Cup match.
God,
They're eye-watering, but they know that they can sell them to a certain demographic. And the approach of the club appears to be, ignore the fact that it's still January or February and people are recovering from the cost of Christmas and so on. We're going to take you for every penny that you've got. That pricing structure is very much going to be maintained at the new stadium if it does take a place. For those Manchester United fans who are on the waiting list for a season ticket, my advice to you is don't build up your hopes. Manchester United, I think they currently have around about 45,000 season tickets. I would expect either a no increase or a very nominal increase when they move to the new stadium, because day tickets can be sold for so much more, and the people who are more likely to buy a day ticket, as we've already discussed, they're Manchester United fans. They want to go and see their team and they want to spend money. So they're going to go in the megastore and they're going to drop another couple of £100 there, if at all possible. And I absolutely understand why. If you're a parent with a child who's been supporting Manchester United for all their life, that you want to give your kid a memorable day out, and it's not going to be a cheap one.
It has to be said, Kieran, the tributes to Dennis Law before your game against Manchester United on Sunday were incredible. They were impeccably done. The lone piper coming on was very moving. You could see how emotional so many Manchester United fans were, and rightly so. But we're not the only people to point out that at the same time as they're celebrating the life of 84-year-old Dennis Law, any fans of the same age in that stadium who grew up watching Dennis Law, United would have them out of that stadium and away from their season ticket in a heartbeat. But yeah, they were very moving. But this next story, Kieran, about Chelsea, arguably could have been our headline story. And I'm slightly baffled. This is a story that every football fan I know, in particular Forest and Everton fans, are incandescent with rage about this. The media, on the other hand, seem to have taken a complete meh attitude to this.
Yes, I mean, I'm looking at my mind map here, and I've written other clubs: Everton, Forest, ?
Yeah.
For those people not familiar with the story, during the purchase negotiations for Chelsea Football Club by Clearlake and Todd Bowley, as part of the due diligence, the prospective purchasers say that they managed to obtain information that there were unusual payments by Chelsea during the Roman Abramovich regime. And on the back of that, they held back a sum in terms of the purchase price. Now, I've heard figures as high as £100 million
Wow.
was held back.
Wow.
I don't know whether that's true or not. So, we've often spoken about Chelsea were sold for £2.5 billion, but it looks as if something up to £100 million was held back by Bowley and co. And it's a separate issue. That money's still sticking. It's still stuck in a bank account somewhere in Whitehall, as opposed to helping the people, the victims of what's happened in Ukraine. Now, the issues that arose and were discovered during the due diligence were in relation to, we've mentioned this before, some sort of off-book payments. And the players involved, I think Willian's name was mentioned. And would that have made a difference to Chelsea? I would say for Willian, it was really nothing. Thank you. Spot that crowbar. But also, there were allegations, and we are talking about allegations, that people connected to Eden Hazard, now we don't know the nature of them, we don't know whether it was the player himself or whether it's the nature of the representatives, they also were being paid, and this money was, the claim is that the money was being paid via a third party, and therefore it wasn't going through Chelsea's books. Now, Eden Hazard is, certainly from my time watching Brighton at the Amex Stadium, Eden Hazard gave the best performance I've seen. And I know he's one of those players who was the epitome of the world mercurial. And it didn't work out for him at Real Madrid. But he won trophies for Chelsea. He contributed towards winning trophies. And also, when he was moving to Chelsea, there were other clubs. There were other clubs in London who were trying to sign him, and he ended up going to Chelsea. Well, therefore, in my view, Chelsea will have gained a sporting advantage. And what Chelsea's owners are saying is, we discovered what was taking place. We've effectively handed ourselves in, and therefore we should not be subject to a points deduction. We should be subject to some sort of financial penalty, and we want to arrange effectively an out-of-court settlement with the Premier League for this. I can assure you, as somebody that has seen many M&A deals, mergers and acquisitions deals, takeovers, however you want to describe it, the first thing that new management do when they take over a business is that they discover things which were wrong with the old regime, and they slag off the old regime. We see it in politics as well. We've seen it this side of the Atlantic. We've just seen it happening with President Trump and so on. And that is straight from the playbook. So, in my view, given that Chelsea have held back £100 million or held back a substantial sum, if they get a financial penalty from the Premier League, then on a net basis, they're no worse off. And you rightly raised the issue of Everton and Nottingham Forest, who have suffered points deductions, who have put their fans through the trauma of waiting for the announcements on those cases to be resolved. As a result of those points deductions, that's impacted upon the place they finished in the table. So therefore, as we've often said, it's £3 to £3.5 million per place, on top of the legal costs, on top of the uncertainty. If Chelsea were to be given what would appear to be preferential treatment, because ultimately it's Chelsea Football Club who have breached the rules. It's not Chelsea Football Club under Roman Abramovich compared to Chelsea Football Club under Todd Bowley. It would seem to be very harsh.
I understand, Kieran, from the limited coverage that the press have given it, that Chelsea have already settled with UEFA.
That I've read that as well, but we look forward to transparency from the governing bodies of football, and if they have, we've seen. I mean, I think UEFA are actually normally very transparent, because they're always quite happy to tell people about the amount that they fined clubs and what they've done this, that, and other to do with financial issues. So if it is true for Chelsea, then come clean. If you've got nothing to hide nothing.
Also, you look at Chelsea's expectations this season, and they were very much played down at the start of the season. They talked about a young squad, a squad in transition. The chances are they won't get into the Champions League. They could possibly get into the Conference, Europa. Would it not be better for them to take a points deduction and go, look, we thought we'd finish mid-table this season. We'll take the points deduction. We will finish mid-table. We'll move on, rather than, this is going to cost them a lot. Whatever the outcome of the negotiations, they're going to have to pay a lot of money in fines, compensation, whatever, to get off the hook, aren't they?
But if they've reduced the bidding price by £100 million, the settlement's not going anywhere near that.
Right. Okay.
So, and there is a very good chance that we will have 5 or 6 Premier League clubs in the Champions League next season, with both Spurs and this isn't a football show, we often say, but with both Spurs and Manchester United, I think it's fair to say, malfunctioning on the pitch. Chelsea won last night. They're still top 4, top 5.
So how many Brighton and Palace fans have screen grabbed the fact that we're both above Tottenham and Man U? So, we've mentioned one Manchester United legend in the name of Dennis Law. We mentioned another, George Best, and I know Northampton Town fans hate this, but it's very difficult to mention George Best, my football idol, without conjuring up images of him scoring 6 goals against Northampton in the FA Cup. Northampton fans might hope this week that is the only thing they've got to worry about.
Yes, we have mentioned this story before, but what we've seen over the course of the last few days is that the former chair, I believe, of Northampton Town Football Club, a gentleman called David Cardoza, plus 4 other individuals have been charged with fraud. For people not familiar with what's been happening at Northampton, the football club applied for a stadium development loan of around about £10 million. And this was to develop one of the stands and I think also to build a hotel. The council, in my view, again, I've been talking about due diligence and competence. Well, I don't think the council played a blinder here. The council appeared to advance that money without perhaps necessarily ensuring sufficient checks and balances. And it looks as if £8.75 million went to a company called First Land Limited. And that money then seemed to disappear. So this deal was arranged with the council around about a decade ago. Northampton Town started work on the stadium. That got stopped because the contractors weren't being paid. And the hotel, I understand, I don't think the hotel's been built. It looks as if there's been a bit more work now taking place on the stand itself. But David Cardoza was connected with the club. He's been charged with various fraudulent activities along with 4 other individuals. And I say we await with interest the outcome of this case. One would hope that the Crown Prosecution Service they've had enough time to put together a strong case, should it be true. Should people have done this. There's never been a satisfactory explanation as to what happened with the money. And to be fair to the police in Northamptonshire, they've been very diligent in investigating this. It's a large amount of money, and it doesn't reflect well on the people concerned.
Now, this other football finance pod you mentioned, Kieran, I don't know much about them other than the fact that they're going to need to start saving up some money for when Nick DeMarco gets medieval on their arse. And I don't know what their attitude is to the order of stories in which they're told, because we have, shortly after a story about Chelsea, another Chelsea story. It may be that this other pod, they would decide to be different to us and say, let's put the Chelsea stories together because they're a lesser pod, Kieran. That's not how we roll. Basically, you mix and match. You put you like a stick of rock. You put the names through the. I bailed out on that metaphor halfway through. I just realised I didn't know how. I don't know how you make sticks of rock. But Chelsea women's team, Kieran, could be partly sold.
Yes. As you know, Kevin.
Yes.
I'm not a cynic.
No.
But on the 28th of June, there appeared to be a transfer of ownership of Chelsea women's football team from effectively Chelsea Football Club to another part of the group. And if that was the case, then there could have been a significant profit. Now, we know that Chelsea are not being charged by the Premier League for its financial affairs for season 23-24. So one can only assume that either Chelsea's finances were far better than everybody else envisaged, because remember, last season they only had a front of shirt deal for half the season and so on. But there were certainly a number of stories doing the rounds that when Chelsea's women's team was sold, it was sold for a quite eye-watering sum. Now, what we are now seeing is stories in the press about a company based in the United States called Monarch Collective. And this is set up by Kieran Nortman. She's associated with Angel City. And it looks like it's a $150 million fund to invest in women's sport. Fantastic. Absolutely great. And the story that's now doing the rounds is that they're looking for a minority stake in Chelsea. One of the things which has caused a lot of eyebrows to be raised is that some people have said that Chelsea women's team was sold for somewhere between 100 and 200 million pounds. And we're going, that's a lot of money. You know, for a club that's playing in Kingsmeadow, yes, they've been successful in Europe, but even so, Bournemouth went for 110 million pounds, and they're playing in the Premier League, so it does seem very high. So, if I was under a bit of scrutiny in relation to let's say it's 100 million pounds, if I could get somebody to come in, I say I'm not a cynic. If I could get somebody to come in to go and buy 10% of Chelsea's women's team for £10 million, you say, well, they're nothing to do with Chelsea. If they've bought 10% for 10 million, it must mean that the whole club's valued at 100 million. So I do think it's an interesting story. It would be good to get clarity. Sunshine is the best disinfectant of uncertainty and to stop the rumour mill from doing the rounds. Chelsea don't appear to be particularly communicative. Certainly, when I've had conversations with some fairly high-ranking journalists on this, they say we're getting absolutely nothing out of the club, which Chelsea are perfectly entitled to do.
Well, they're not going to be communicative to you, Kieran, are they? Because you seem to have some sort of Graham Potter Cucurella-based beef with them.
No, Graham Potter's fine. I like Graham Potter. Cucurella, that's a different story.
Okay. I should point out, by the way, some of our listeners may have noticed a glug glug sound effect just a few moments ago that sounded suspiciously like a glass of wine being poured. We are recording this quite late on Tuesday night, Kieran, rather than quite early.
That's my fault. Yes,
that's fine. It doesn't matter when we record it, but I would like to point out we aren't recording this early on Wednesday morning as normal, because that would be a suspicious glug glug sound at 9:30 on a Wednesday morning. We are often asked, Kieran, in fact, just last week on the Questions Pod, we were asked about the anomaly that allows some Welsh teams to play in English football, but doesn't allow Scottish teams to play in English football. And here's an intriguing development on the Welsh-English football story.
Yes. Apart from those clubs that are presently playing in the English Football League, so Swansea, Cardiff, Wrexham, Newport, I think there's only one team which is geographically based in Wales, which is playing in the English Pyramid, and that is Merthyr Tydfil. Now, the Welsh Football Association have sort of given a nudge, nudge, wink, wink, do you want to come and play in Wales, to Merthyr Tydfil? And they've been quite generous. So I think they've said, well, we'll give you £2 million immediately for ground development. And I think that's a really good thing. So if you're going to try to persuade somebody to come into the Cymru Premier, that giving them money to go and spend on players seems a bit tacky. Giving them money to improve facilities and infrastructure for fans, for staff, for players, and so on, I think is good. And on top of that, they think that they might be able to get a further £4 million from various pots, from various grants, to take a total persuasion fee of £6 million. And if that does go ahead, then fine. Merthyr Tydfil, as I understand it, is a fan-owned club, so it will be down to the members to make that decision. And I would imagine they will do it for what they consider to be the best interests of the club on a longer-term basis. I think there's a lot of romantic and emotional justification in moving to the Welsh League, but ultimately it's down to the members to make their final choice.
It's an incredibly complex historical situation, Kieran, and we have seen clubs in the last 30 years flip-flop between the non-league clubs, flip-flop between English and Welsh football. The whole issue of Newport Town, which we simply haven't got time to go into here. But I do wonder what's in it for Welsh football to spend so much money to try and entice Merthyr across.
Well, it's not really coming from the FA of Wales. It's trying to build up the reputation of Welsh football. We've seen TNS this season get a couple of results in the Europa Conference. And I must confess that as somebody who was fairly sceptical as to the new setup in UEFA's European formatting, I'm liking it more and more because it's allowing LAN and TNS to get a couple of decent results and to still be in with perhaps an outside chance, but a chance of progressing in the tournaments, and it's giving additional exposure to the non-Big Five leagues as well. Ultimately, you're fighting. It is David versus Goliath, but it's nice to see David doing a bit better than we'd originally expected. And normally, you just be cannon fodder in the old format of the UEFA competitions, and that meant by match day 5, and I hate to use that phrase, match day, your season was effectively over. Here, we're seeing people still have a chance.
I'm with you, and I find myself slightly annoyed to admit that I do like this system. Even tonight, Monaco Villa, which in previous years would have been a non-entity, but it was a very important game because Monaco out of nowhere beat Villa and end up on the same points, and it's all slightly knife-edgy. That's a terrible expression, it's slightly knife-edgy. That will teach me to have that second glass of wine. Saudi Arabia and their public investment fund, Kieran, has been the subject of much talk on this pod. And they're not only acquiring stakes in football clubs, they're acquiring stakes in broadcasting.
Yeah, and not just broadcasting. When FIFA announced a few weeks ago that DAZN were going to be the broadcasting partner for the FIFA Club World Cup, which is taking place this summer, I think we discussed this, and I think you said that, where is DAZN getting £1 billion from? I bet they're going to get that from somewhere else. And Kevin, your prediction was true. Because it now appears that the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund is going to buy a stake in DAZN. I get DAZN are on my company's house list of companies that I observe, and their finances haven't been great. They've spent a lot of money trying to get the rights for a variety of sports, and then trying to get the subscriptions to provide the funding. Hasn't always worked out as well as they'd like, but they keep doing it. It will be very good for them if they could get a substantial investment. I think we're talking, the figures being quoted are up to £1 billion, because that will just about cover the cost of broadcasting the FIFA Club World Cup this summer, which is, as a cynic would say, that the two things are linked, but neither are you or I cynics, so therefore we wouldn't.
I don't know where you get this idea from. No, I'm not a cynic, Kieran. So I can be, but not in this situation. Of course, that would be churlish. Just those figures are purely coincidental. I'm less worried about where DAZN are getting their money from, Kieran, than the fact that a company that's spelt DAZN is pronounced DAZN. They're playing to rules that I can't comprehend anymore. Our last two stories, Kieran, are, on the face of it, I was going to say quite funny, but they're hilarious. We mentioned this. I mean, this is there is a football finance element to this question, which is why the only reason we're talking about it, Kieran. Lazio, Eagle handler, fake penis. How much? Discuss.
Yes. So this story, and I am struggling a bit more to find the football finance angle, but this is one Bernabe, whose job at Lazio is to parade around the ground with an eagle mascot. And he decided to go for some below-waist surgery, which everybody's entitled to do. I'm not being judgmental on that.
No.
Probably not necessarily a good idea if you've got a job which is high profile-ish, to then post pictures of the post-operational issue online, because I think they're verging on pornographic. I've not seen them, but I know people that have. With a big smile on his face, and I was talking to a medical friend of mine who I'm not going to refer to it as the secret pecker implanter, but he described, each to their own. It sounded painful and an awful lot of hard work, but the mascot holder, Juan Bernabe, has now been sacked by Lazio, effectively. So the financial angle is that he's lost his employment. I think any sympathy that I may have had for him very quickly evaporated when you do a bit more of a background check. He was previously sacked from his role in 2021 for doing Duce Mussolini based chants, and I'm not a big fan of Mussolini myself.
No, I don't
he
think
claimed that Mussolini was greatly misunderstood and did an awful lot of work for Italy, which I'm not so sure that my understanding of history is in alignment with his.
The old Paolo Di Canio argument, and possibly the new Elon Musk argument. Who knows? I look forward to Elon Musk making the trains run on time in America. I'm sorry, Kieran. It is a very funny story.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not least because the one thing I know about eagles is they will eat anything. So I mean, the last thing you want to do to an eagle is just basically encourage it to see a big no. Yeah. Also, I know the person quite well who trained Kayla the eagle.
Oh, really?
Apparently, yeah. I don't think I can. He drinks in the porcelain. I'm not entirely sure I can look him in the eyes. I'm not suggesting that all eagle.
Don't look him anywhere other than the eye.
That's a good point. Yeah, I'm not suggesting that all eagle handlers. I don't want to get angry. God forbid we lose our eagle handling listeners to the other podcast that started, Kieran. But it's just, I mean, you wait 5 years for an avian story to come along, Kieran, and then two come along at once. I mean, this is. I laughed out loud at this story, Kieran. I'm sorry, and also oddly because it's a team I hadn't heard of until about November when they cropped up in a story that we did.
Yes.
West Allotment Celtic.
Yes, West Allotment Celtic FC, who play in North Tyneside. Great, local community club and all that. Fairly close to their football ground, there has been some construction development taking place. And also, that construction stroke development was where traditionally a flock of geese would choose to reside. Unfortunately, it would appear that as a result of said construction, the flock of geese decided to try to find somewhere else to rest themselves, which they're perfectly entitled to do. They just flown a long way. I think they're Canada geese, so it's a long way. It's a long way from Canada to Tyneside. It looked like it was an evening match. It certainly was a match. So it's probably not an evening match. And the opposition said, there's an awful lot of goose poo on the pitch. We're not happy about that. So therefore, to be fair to the good staff of West Allotment Celtic FC, they tried to scrape up the goose poo, but the opposition still complained, and the referee decided, I think on health and safety grounds, that the match could not take place, and therefore it had to be postponed. Now, that's the funny side of the story. The trouble is, people have already travelled. You've got the costs of running a match, cost of putting electricity, getting the showers and the baths ready beforehand, and so on. So there has been a financial cost to a West Allotment Celtic FC. To be fair to them, I think they've embraced this in the right way. So they've got a raffle of which the first prize even, is a bottle of, is it Grey Goose? My alcohol knowledge is sketchy at the best of times. So the first prize is Grey Goose vodka. If anybody wants to go and support that, they're also selling T-shirts. This T-shirt helped save a goose, or something like that. And it's part of the reason we love the football in this country.
I very much doubt that West Allotment Celtic have a full-time PR person, but whoever decided to do that, they handled it fantastically. They dealt with it very, very well, I thought, to their enormous credit. There are two things I would say off the back of that, Kieran. Is that, firstly, my good friend Chris Packham, yes,
I know your Chris Packham stories.
Yeah, my good friend Chris Packham would probably ask me to point out that they are Canada geese, Kieran, but they probably live here rather than being from Canada, in the same way that Brent geese are not from Brent. Essentially, I think he would like to. Yes. It's not going to get me back in his good books, Kieran, but I'll point it out on his behalf. And also, as a lot of friends of mine said, imagine back when we were playing Sunday football, Kieran, back in the day, if we were to refuse to play on a pitch that had some kind of animal poo on it, we wouldn't have played any game at all.
Exactly.
It's simple as that. I mean, every now and again, our star striker, who was, was very, very good, he would simply turn on his heels and say, I'm not playing on that pitch. The rest of us would get on with it.
Yes.
Foxes, dogs, hedgehogs. Sometimes the actual hedgehog was still on the pitch while you. So the fact that what sort of modern footballers are we breeding, Kieran, that they can't tiptoe around a 2.5 inches of goose poo on a football pitch? Yeah, take that, other pod.
Yes.
Don't forget, you can now join our Pricer Football Club, where you'll get ad-free listening, bonus episodes, and much, much more for not very much money. Just go to pricerfootball.com and click on Join the Club to sign up today. And one important thing to be aware of, if you are one of our wonderful Patreon subscribers from back in the day, your membership will not transfer over automatically if you sign up to the new club. You'll need to cancel your Patreon subscription and set up a new one using the link on the website. We will turn off our Patreon offering at the end of February. And don't forget, Pricer Football Club members, I think it's next week. It's coming up imminently.
It is.
Our first live
Q&A.
When I'm expecting lots of questions about geese. So, yes, if you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@pricerfootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter or X, and you can find us on our YouTube channel. And if you'd like to buy our book, you can find details on our website, pricerfootball.com. We'll be back on Tuesday with our customary questions pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his usual farewell.
Well, as always, thank you for everybody that's been in contact. With the transfer window coming up, I think it's fair to say my phone has been full of messages from a variety of social media sources, and I genuinely do try to answer as many as I can, but please bear with me. I do have a wife and a job to also try to fit in as much, and I'm in trouble with the Baroness. I went away to part of the weekend with a series of Allen keys to try to put together the furniture, which has finally arrived at the apartment, and I came back. And when sometimes you walk into the house and you know that you've done something wrong, but you don't know what it is. It was one of those. And the Baroness said to me, I've been counting your football shirts and your T-shirts of bands that you go to watch, and there's 87 of them. And I said, wow, that's brilliant. I didn't know this. Oh, thanks for counting. I was genuinely, I like numbers.
Saved you a job, yeah?
Yeah. And she says if there's not enough room for them and so on. So I got a bit of a wing. But I'm emotionally attached to them. And she goes, who are the anti-nowhere league?
What?
And I'm
what?
going, exactly. So I was slightly upset, but I'm still here. So I don't know how I drifted onto that. This is why there's an alternative podcast that people can listen to. I think it's my inability to stay on topic. But thank you for everybody that does keep in contact with us. We genuinely appreciate it. And if you want to join the club, I think we're doing a special question show for club members, which might be going out this Friday. And then next Monday, we've got a sort of a live Q&A, which we're really looking forward to. So producer Guy has sent out links to that, and I think we'll be on Zoom, so we'll be able to give you a wave and say hello and so on. And we'll be around for a wee bit on Monday evening to have a chat with you all. Any questions? And this is free management consultancy for £3. Well, not free; it's £3.99 a month. But you try getting management consultancy for £3.99 and see how much you get. So that's one way of supporting the show. Equally, we've been talking about ticket prices. We've been talking about the cost of living. If you want to just listen and hopefully have an enjoyable time, that's absolutely fantastic. But one additional way that you can support the show is to give us a review. It genuinely helps in terms of keeping the profile of the show. It helps us with algorithms, and algorithms are very big in social media these days, apparently. It doesn't matter what you say. You could even say you would rather have the show presented by Mark Almond. And the reason why I say that, I was listening to Soft Cell and reminding myself of the first time I went to see Soft Cell. I think I'd probably overdone the guy liner. And my jangly bracelets and so on. And I got chatted up by a 42-year-old photocopier salesman called Keith.
Oh.
That was very exciting for a young man. That was. I didn't take him up on it, but you even say, and that was that. Take that, which is brilliant as well. Not take that. I mean, soft sell. What am I talking about? But you even say you would rather have the show presented by Mark Almond and Tommy Cooper, and I think they would be a really surreal coming together of minds.
Yeah, not the nicest man, Tommy Cooper.
I've heard a mixed story.
Yeah.
Did you ever write for him?
No. No one wrote for him. He just nicked stuff. He didn't.
Right.
That's for another pod. I like the fact that you found out quite a lot of information about Keith. You found out he was 42 and sold photocopies. Mark Almond. Do you know what's just? It's just occurred to me. How annoying is it going to be if that new Football Finance pod wins a BAFTA and an FSA award simply because they don't bang on about the Anti-Nowhere League and Allen Keys to the extent. You need to talk to Ali about Allen Keys. And also, I should point out to the Baroness, loads of Allen Keys take up far less space than loads of T-shirts.
Exactly.
Yeah, Ali as a proper stage manager, she's got. Who knew you needed so many Allen Keys? But she sounds like Marley's ghost when she's walking through. When she's got her Allen Key belt on. He's got how many? You got all the Allen Keys. Why is it me still trying to put the furniture together? I don't, because it makes a laugh. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. Price of Football.